when she lets me slip away. She tells me
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music. Today, guys, we're running a little short on the new 2011 album, so what Tom and I are going to do is anytime, and I can tell you the next 10 set of albums that we put on our schedule is going to be like this too, because I looked at the upcoming albums, and it's dry for about a month. But let me tell you something. That gives us a huge opportunity to go back into throwback releases from like decades ago that we want to review, and that you guys want to. We've gotten a lot of feedback that there's a lot of viewers out there who want to see throwback reviews, and that's something that we feel like other music critics, even vloggers who are more dynamic, who have the ability to be more dynamic in the reviews that we give, like Fantano or 3 Creation or Macasaur, we're able to go back and do some throwbacks. And that's something that you guys really like. So we'll always have you vote for them, and on this one we allowed you to vote between this, the album we're reviewing here, which won the popular vote. This is Blur's self-titled album, their 5th album that came out in '97. You guys voted that you wanted to see us review this over Ween's Chocolate and Cheese, which Tom and I love, but we also love Blur. And as you're about to find out, this is one of Tom's favorite albums of all time. And so I'm going to let him take over and give you his analysis of this 1997 British masterpiece.
All right. Yes. This album is one of my favorites of all time. In a little history on Blur, you know, they started as just kind of a pop rock band in Britain in the early 90s. Their first album came out in 91. They kind of coined that phrase and defined that genre. And what's interesting about this is the album previous to this came out in 95, and that was The Great Escape, and this came out in 97. And what's crazy about it is Great Escape was very good, but it wasn't horribly adventurous. It was just really quality songwriting, because that's what these guys do. They make great songs. Right. But it was pretty safe. It carried a lot more of the poppy aspects of Park Life, their 1994 release, but wasn't even nearly as, to use the word again, adventurous as Park Life. Right. They focused it a little more on the traditional rock setup, took out some of the thrashy punk songs and some of the ambient songs of Park Life and made a more focused album. And then self-titled in 97, and it was like, what the hell happened? Right. It was just a complete 180, because they go from the poppy guitars to just noisy, in-your-face, lo-fi guitars, just an assault of them, but they still keep the quality songwriting.
And a lot of that's because Graham Coxon, the guitarist, he had this love of American music at the time, and the grunge scene that was going on, and
the lo-fi stuff. And that's what's interesting, is that Blur, with Park Life and The Great Escape, had become so popular. Park Life won them so many awards, and yet they're such humble, such down-to-earth guys that what they did is, while they were influencing the world with their music, they were being influenced by stuff that was hardly as popular as them. Right. They were listening to all this unheard of lo-fi stuff, and they were like, this is the good stuff. So they were influenced by that, and essentially brought it to the pop scene, brought that sound that hadn't really gotten much attention to the pop scene through their own music and letting it influence them. In the documentary I have of them, No Distance to Left to Run, it came out in 2009, highly recommended for any Blur fan. It is incredible. And Alex James, the bass player, talks about this album, self-titled, and he said the way he puts it is, he says, you know, back when Great Escape came out, the front like 3 rows of all our concerts were screaming 15-year-old girls. He was like, and basically with this album, we said, screw it, we don't need that. And he's like, looking back at that, I think that's a pretty ballsy move. And it really is, because this is completely different, and it shows how much they care about their music as an art.
Makes me want to hug him.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Right. You know, just how much they care about their music in that way. Now for me, I got this album pretty soon after it came out. In 97, maybe early 98 is when I got it. And it really got me into a lot of different kinds of music. It was very key to me, which is why there's a lot of bias here. But at the same time, I want you to realize I actually didn't really get hardcore into this album again until like
the last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, the first album list I made, this wasn't on there.
Right.
I don't know if you even realized that, but
that was in 2007.
Yeah, because I had made it, or I'd listened to these quite a bit by the time I'd made that, but I honestly was just kind of like, but really in like the last year, I've gone back and listened to all of Blur's stuff, and I'm like, this band is genius. So it's not even as much bias as you would think.
Right.
It's just me going back and finding an appreciation for this and realizing that this album is just full of great tracks, a unique sound. I gotta admit, I am just in love with the fact that they're like, screw that pop stuff, we're just gonna do what we want to do and be noisy and be cool. And
that sort of attitude is just it's something that should be applauded.
Exactly. And I mean, when they made this, they were in like their mid-20s.
Right.
You know, and they had already come out with four other albums.
Right.
And it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So anyway, what did you think?
Well, in time, you know, I think this is a very, very good album. I'm obviously I don't have the memories associated with the emotional attachment that you do, because Blur is a band that you've gotten me into, just, you know, by force from being you know, you're one of your best friends. It's just that you've forced me to listen to Blur over the years. I honestly got into Damon Albarn's music through Gorillaz, which is how I think a lot of Americans have gotten into to Blur, or just Damon Albarn in general. But then, you know, through your coaxing, I have started to develop this love for Blur. Park Life, Modern Life is Rubbish, and now self-titled, which I had listened to this album several times before bringing it here to review it, but now going through a detailed review process, because we really dig into these albums when we listen to them, guys. And I love this album. I think that there's a lot of just genius songwriting, a lot of great instrumentation is presented here. Mood. This is a moody album, and it shows diverse moods, more upbeat, more kind of brooding, just grinding moods. I love that. And a lot of just catchy X factor that we talk about is just the innate ability of a song or an album to just get you and get in your head and it won't leave. And those sort of hooks are like the track 5, On Your Own, is one of the catchiest damn songs I've ever heard in my life. I can hear it in my head right now and I'm loving it. I can just listen to this all day long. My only criticism about this album, Tom, which I think that once you start loving something and you start attaching yourself to it, you start overlooking some of the minor criticisms, as I'm about to describe. Keep in mind, this is minor, all you Blur fans out there. This is a very minor criticism, and in the grand scheme of things, means nothing. But as a critic, I'm obligated to say this. I think that the album kind of unravels at the end. I don't feel like some of the Bowie-esque Strange News from Another Star, and then Moving On is a good song.
I really like Moving On.
I really like it too, but it's been accomplished already by that point. It doesn't really add anything to the story. I would actually have preferred if they would have just ended it with that song. I thought that would have worked well as a closer. But then the last track, Essex Dogs, which on some versions is divided into 3 different tracks, but we listened to it as it was originally intended, which is just one track. I feel like the whole thing, while it's cool, it's experimental, and ambient almost at times, it to me, it just doesn't function well as effectively as a closer. I would almost have just wanted that to be a B-side. Now, contextually, it's 97. Things were done a bit differently back then. And so overall, I don't value that criticism very highly. So overall, I really love this album. I'm going 87 with it.
I have to go 100.
You're kind of obligated,
of
aren't
course.
you?
And one more thing that I want to point out real quick, that you kind of address with the way people get into this band through Damon Albarn and his other projects, such as Gorillaz, is that the thing I love about Blur is that they are a band.
Right. It's a band.
No matter how much you put emphasis on Damon Albarn's vocals, Graham Coxon is amazing guitarist. Track 7, You're So Great, is just Graham Coxon.
He did the majority, a lot of the songwriting was put on Graham Coxon's
exactly.
shoulders.
And not only that, but like I think people underestimate Alex James as a bass player and Dave Rowntree as a drummer. I mean, you look at Song 2, which I actually think is not one of the stronger tracks on the album, but it's one of the most well-known here in the States. And you look at that, and the drums and the bass are what makes it. Because what a lot of people hear as the guitar in that really rocking out moving part is actually the bass. And people don't realize that. And that's just the beauty of this band, is that every member is brilliant at what they do, whether you realize it or not.
One tiny thing we didn't mention before is for 97, this is fantastic production too.
Yeah.
And a lot of lo-fi production, which I liked, and obviously that's the style that they were trying to emulate. And a lot of the track "Look Inside America" kind of really depicts what Blur as a band was doing with this album, was just they were looking inside America and finding a lot of really cool things musically to have. And now that we have such a, with the advent of the internet, we have such a global music music sharing community. I mean, the changes we're seeing in music now are just like nothing else we've ever seen. And it started with albums like this, with like Blur's self-titled album. What did you guys think about Blur's self-titled album? What's your favorite Blur album? Tell us at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, every 2 weeks we put up a vote. So follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, because that's where you'll see the chance. We'll put up a link. We'll say, please help us vote, and you'll get some options, and you get to be a part of what VIMTV is all about, and that's reviewing and talking about music. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
You are VIMTV, and together we are moving music critique forward.